They say with great power comes great responsibility, but that doesn't always apply in every case. We've seen many world leaders get to positions of power and then mess it up with one scandal or the other. It's almost a very common thing with popular people these days, making you wonder whether these changes come with the power that's given to them. Former President George W. Bush is no different, and in this video we're going to take a look at the life of this popular figure. Before we look at where it all went wrong, let's look at the beginning of his life. George W. Bush was born on July 6th of 1946 in New Haven, Connecticut. He was the first child of Barbara Pierce and George Herbert Walker Bush. Unlike many past and present presidents of the United States, George W. Bush comes from a long line of an American dynastic family, often described as the most successful political dynasty in American history, with members that are prominent in the fields of American business, politics, sports, news, and entertainment. This is seen as his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, who served as the vice president during the Ronald Reagan administration from 1981 to 1989, as well as being the 41st president of the country from 1989 to 1993. Apart from that, his paternal grandfather, Prescott Bush, served as a U.S. Senator for Connecticut from 1952 to 1963. For a kid from such a prominent family, it's expected that George W. Bush got the best education possible, which he did. He started in public schools in Midland, Texas until the end of the 7th grade, after which his family moved to Houston. And he spent the next 2 years at a college preparatory school called the Kincaid School. For high school, he went to Phillips Academy, a boarding institution in Andover, Massachusetts, after which he continued his college education at Yale University from 1964 to 1968, finishing with a Bachelor of Arts degree in history. George W. Bush was a member of the Skull and Bones Society during his senior year. He was a rugby union player, and he was a member of Yale's first XV, often describing himself as an average student. Later, he enrolled at Harvard Business School in the fall of 1973, graduating with an MBA in 1975. He also was known as the only U.S. president to ever earn an MBA. Being a kid from one of the largest, most important families in the United States meant that George W. Bush had a lot of career choices. Most people would have thought that since his father and grandfather were both politicians, he wouldn't think twice before following in their footsteps. However, that's not exactly the case with this man. George W. Bush decided to try his hand at a couple of professions before making his way on into the world of politics, and the first place he went was the military. His military career began in 1968 when he was enlisted in the Texas National Air Guard. He went through 2 years of training in active duty service and was later assigned to the Houston Flying Convair F-102 Delta Dagger, along with the 147th Reconnaissance Wing stationed at Ellington Field Joint Reserve Base. However, this appointment didn't sit well with some people who claimed that he got special treatment due to his daddy being a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, while pointing to his low pilot aptitude test scores and irregular attendance. Nevertheless, these claims were put to rest in June 2005 when the Department of Defense released all the records of his service at the Texas Air National Guard, which remain in its official archives to date. What seemed like a very illustrious career took a hit when George W. Bush was suspended from flying after failing to appear for a scheduled physical exam. This was soon followed by an honorable discharge from the Air Force Reserve on November 21st of 1974. 3 years after the end of his military career, George W. Bush set up a small oil exploration company called Arbusto Energy, which later changed its name to Bush Exploration. Giggity. In 1984, the company was merged with Spectrum 7, causing George W. Bush to become the chairman. However, following the devastating decrease in oil prices, the company was folded into HKN Inc., with him becoming a member of the company's board of directors. Signs of dishonesty arose again as there were questions of allegations of possible insider trading involvement in the company. This happened when he learned that his family friend, Eddie Childs, planned to sell the Texas Rangers baseball franchise with the new stadium, which was built on land attained under eminent domain law and developed and funded through taxpayers' money backed by a bond issued for its debt. He got a couple of investors in April 1989 from his father's close friends, such as fellow fraternity brother Roland W. Betts, and they bought an 86% share of the Rangers for $75 million. However, this is where things would go south for the former president. George W. Bush received a 2% share for investing $606,302, of which $500,000 was a bank loan. He went against the advice of his counsel and repaid the loan by selling stock in Harken Energy, worth $848,000. The company recorded substantial financial losses within a year following the sale, which led to the allegations of insider trading. Luckily for the former president, the Securities and Exchange Commission concluded on March 27th of 1992 that he had a pre-existing plan to sell a relatively limited role in Harkin management, and that the agency hadn't seen any evidence of insider trading. The ensuing investigation by the SEC was concluded in 1992 with a memo that stated, "It appears that Bush did not engage in illegal insider trading." However, the agency noted that the memo must in no way be considered as indicating that the party has been exonerated, or that no action may ultimately result. What seemed like the end of the allegations of possible insider trading gave birth to more claims of favoritism, as critics claimed that this decision was majorly influenced by the makeup of the agency at the time, which greatly favored George W. Bush. This proposed a valid point, considering that the chairman of the SEC at the time was a good friend of the Bush family, Richard Breeden, who was nominated to the agency by his father, President George H.W. Bush, who worked as a lawyer in James Baker's firm, Baker Botts. Apart from that, the agency's general counsel at the time was James Doty, appointed by President H.W. Bush, and a lawyer in James Baker's firm, Baker Botts, representing George W. Bush, when they made arrangements to acquire the Texas Rangers baseball franchise. After trying his hand at business and being pretty successful, George W. Bush finally decided to go into politics by running for the House of Representatives from Texas' 19th Congressional District in the 1978 elections. He did lose to his opponents, Ken Hance, but it did lead him to move to Washington, D.C. in 1988 to serve as the liaison to the media and campaign advisor on his father's campaign for the U.S. presidency. After that, he declared his candidacy for the Texas gubernatorial election in 1994, at the exact same time that his brother Jeb Bush was running for the governorship in Florida. Sounds fishy, right? George W. Bush easily won the Republican primaries, and after pledging to sign a bill that permitted Texans to obtain permits to carry concealed weapons, he was on a fast track to becoming the governor, which he did. It didn't help that there were rumors of his opponent being gay, which got into public record when one of George W. Bush's campaign advisors allowed himself, possibly by accident, to be quoted criticizing former Governor Ann Richards for appointing avowed homosexual activists to state jobs. Nonetheless, George W. Bush became the governor and did great things, which earned him a lot of supporters and critics alike. He went on to contest for a second term and win, becoming the first Texas governor in the state's history to be elected consecutively for 2 4-year terms. After this re-election, there were a lot of speculations, and within a year he started seeking the Republican presidential nomination in 2000. He went on to win the 2000 presidential election, defeating former Vice President Al Gore by a slim margin, one which caused a lot of controversies at the time. He sought re-election in 2004 against Massachusetts Senator John Kerry, emphasizing support for a USA Patriot Act, a solid commitment to the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, and a renewed policy shift for constitutional amendments prohibiting abortion and same-sex marriage, amongst many other political reforms. He was elected to the presidency and served as the U.S. president from 2001 to 2009. On the periphery, everyone saw a man who was very versatile and active in multiple areas. However, that wasn't the same story when you dig a little deeper. Before he got married in 1977, George W. Bush struggled with many episodes of alcohol abuse, one of which happened on September 4th of 1976, when he was stopped near the Bush summer home in Kennebunkport, Maine, for driving under alcohol influence. The cops cited him for DUI, fined him $150, and briefly suspended his Maine driver's license. In later years, he worked on fighting his alcohol abuse, succeeding in 1986, stating that his wife influenced that lifestyle change. However, this alcohol and DUI issue is nothing compared to the sexual violation case raised against him in 2002. Apparently, a Texas woman by the name of Margie Schrodinger sued George W. Bush for sexual violation of both herself and her husband, and demanded $50 million for emotional distress, loss of freedom, and ability to pursue plaintiff's own dreams, alienation of affection from plaintiff's spouse, loss of privacy, being disparaged on the internet, and the loss of plaintiff's ability to be a Christian writer. Furthermore, she claimed that she and her husband were drugged, kidnapped, violated, and threats to their lives were made. Shockingly, there wasn't a lot of media coverage, as Leanne Kletzman for the Fort Bend Stars was the only person to report the story, claiming that the former president conspired with local police and the FBI to cover up this entire crime. However, the newspaper editor, John Sandlin, later stated that the report wasn't supposed to go up yet, adding that he had heard Margie Schrodinger was a nutcase. The story was republished a couple of times, but there's little evidence of it. It said that the story's accuracy doesn't seem to be enough for the media, and the story doesn't meet its threshold of responsible journalism. It doesn't help that Margie was found dead on September 22nd of 2003 with a bullet to the head and a declaration of suicide. However, her relative has vanished, and so has her lawsuit from the state of Texas history of lawsuits. Which brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching the Playboy and Dishonest Life of George W. Bush.